Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Losing Your Parents International Radio Show, broadcasting from Portland, Oregon. My name is Lisa A. Snyder, and I've lost both of my parents to cancer when I was in my 20s. When I was 22, I woke up next to my dad who had died, and when I was 27, I watched my mom take her last breath. Both of my parents had different kinds of cancer. They died 5 years between one another. I suffered greatly in my 20s. Dealing with their deaths and trying to live life as a young human being, a young woman in the world. And, after being present for their deaths and witnessing their illnesses, I had to really figure out what it was that was going to help me in my life. I felt devastated, and I felt confused, and I felt lost, and I didn't want to feel like that forever. So I decided that I wanted to figure out how I could feel through those things and move forward. So not getting over their deaths, just moving forward in my own life as a human and as a woman and as someone who lost their parents young. It's also my intention to connect with other people who have lost their parents. It's going to happen to everybody. Unfortunately, sometimes it happens earlier in life. Now I'm in my early 30s, and I write and I talk about my journey through my healing and working through grief-related stuff and challenges that come up. I like to use creativity and self-expression as my tools, and I like to do experiments, really, see if something works, kind of like a scientist would. My blog is losingyourparents.org, and my goal is to bridge the gap between grief and joy at every possible opportunity, if and when possible. If you'd like to get in touch, you can contact me, losingyourparents.org/contact. I really love feedback. I got an email this morning, actually yesterday, that I really appreciated receiving, and it was just really nice for someone to reach out and say, hey, I love your writing, and how you approach losing your parents, and they asked for feedback on something, which I just really appreciated that. So thanks. I have a sister site called griefpost.com. It's totally anonymous self-expression, so you can go there if you want to share whatever's on your mind, and no names, no email addresses, just posts. So last week we talked about forgiving ourselves, and we talked about Byron Katie a little bit, and I talked about the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet. All of those things last week's show, and the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet is also on my website. I also this week did a little experiment with video, which I can see myself doing a little bit more of, because I think it's just, I'm trying to make myself accessible as I talk about these topics, and the video experiment was really me just talking about this book that I finished called I Died 3 Times in 1977. And I talked about PMH Atwater. I talk about her all over my blog, and I've talked about her several times in other shows. And she's a woman that died 3 times in 1977, and each time she died, she had a little bit deeper of an experience of the afterlife. She saw her body on the floor. She kind of didn't want to go back to her body, and she talks about the things that she saw. It is, in my opinion, it's not coming from like a super religious place. It's coming from like, this is what I saw, this is what I experienced. So, she saw amazing things that are kind of hard for the brain to comprehend, but she saw how creation was made, and she saw what it looked like, and she saw that thoughts were actually things, and that thoughts made creation. And I actually had to read several parts of the book like again and again to just try and grasp it, because it's she tries very hard to be visual, and I really appreciate that because I'm a very visual person. So she even drew some pictures in the book, and after she had her experiences, she was kind of quiet about them, And then she went to a seminar about death and dying, and there's a scientist there that talked about what time creation might look like, speculation. And the visual that he provided on the slide that he was showing to everybody in the room was almost the exact version of what she saw after she died. Back in the physical realm, when she was still around her body, she noticed that thoughts were actually things, and that they had really kind of like gray matter, and she bounced up to the light source, which is sort of like the first thing that happens, like when you die, like your soul gets exported out through the top of your head. You can sort of see what's going on around you, but that the earth is so not the last thing or the only thing in this whole universe. There is a lot out there, and she explains a lot of that in the book. My video is very brief. I didn't talk about any of these details. I'm kind of just experimenting with video and seeing how it goes and seeing what is it that I want to say and how. And so I envision talking a little bit more. Call dropped for a second. Sorry about that. So anyway, I was just talking about experimenting with video and how I can see myself talking a little bit more, and I don't know what, but, maybe it's talking about books, maybe it's talking about life situations, I don't know, but I have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/losingyourparents, and you can also subscribe on the sidebar of losingyourparents.org. I'd also love to get some feedback, like from you. What is it you want me to talk about? I have a lot to say and a lot to share and a lot to discuss. I know that grief is a really personal thing, and so I'm just coming from my own experiences and sharing them, and whatever you want to pull from or not, like, that's cool. I'm not here to tell anybody what to do, just sharing information about how, like, things that have come up for me and things that come up for other people, but something I can identify with and something that I've walked through and that I can sort of mentally and emotionally walk through with others or to others. So today I'd like to talk about bucket lists. So this is actually a really fun topic in my opinion, because one of the things that I really experimented with thinking about is, okay, so my dad died and death seems to be a physical end. I think there's more to it than that, but what am I going to do with my life? Like when my dad died, it was the day before my 23rd birthday. I'm in my early 20s. I had just graduated from college, and I was still trying to figure out what it was that I was doing. I did have an internship at the time at a production company in Manhattan, which I eventually got a full-time gig there, job. And I just thought, this life is not for wasting. I could waste it. I could do a lot of stupid things, but I'd rather enjoy it as best I can. So I booked myself, at 24, I booked myself a trip to Amsterdam and a train ride to Paris, and I took myself on a solo trip to Europe. I ate whatever I wanted, I drank whatever I wanted, I went wherever I wanted, and it was a very free experience. Like, it was kind of lonely only because, I'd never been to Europe before, and I was just like, I'm going to go by myself. So, of course, I had some, lonely moments, but mostly I was really enjoying my own time, and I didn't really talk to anybody. I think the people I made friends with were actually in Paris, and, I just enjoyed my time, and I shut off the world. Like, I didn't think about work. I didn't think about what was going on in the United States. I was just like, I'm going to go and do this. And I wrote a lot. I videotaped myself. I did some audio recordings. It was very therapeutic. And actually, at the end of it, I discovered that I wasn't happy in the job that I was doing. I loved what I did, but I wasn't happy, being creatively capped at maintaining 4 different websites, and I thought also maybe they might want to grow, and maybe I wasn't the right person, and it was just time for everybody to grow. And so I also grieved a relationship that I had finished recently, or at that time it was recent, and I felt just so free. I felt incredibly like, wow, like a whole weight has been lifted off my shoulders. And I'm just so thankful for that experience, and thankful that I got myself the tickets to go. I'm thankful that I figured out what it was I wanted, where it was I wanted to go, what it was I wanted to do, and experiment. And I went to I went to museums, and I'm distracted right now because this cat wants to get out of my office. Okay. So yeah. All right, getting refocused. Talking about Amsterdam. So I left my job, and I actually decided that I was going to launch my own web design business, like full-time. And that whole trip changed my life. Like, I was seriously, it changed my life. And so that was one of my bucket list items, was to go to Amsterdam. Another one of my bucket list items, and they can be small or large. That was a big one, like that's a lot of money and some time and whatever. A bucket list item might be like to ride a bike again. A bucket list item might be to try a new food that you've never tried before. To call someone you haven't called in like 10 years. Like, so it doesn't have to be like a big trip somewhere. I kind of make these bucket list things trips and journeys and whatnot. But that's not necessarily what a bucket list item is. Like, maybe it's you want to take a pottery class, and you just kind of keep pushing it aside, and you're like, oh, it's not a big deal. But, like, inside you, you're kind of, like, screaming out, I really, really, really want to do this, but all this stuff is getting in the way. So you got to, like, make it a priority, like your bucket list item. You need to sort of start dreaming about what are your bucket list items. Like, in a perfect world, one of my bucket list items, like, I want to buy a Vespa. Like, I just want to get to a place where I feel like, yeah, I want to ride a Vespa around. And then maybe when I do it, I'm like, this is great. Or maybe when I do it, I'm like, this sucks. I don't know. But I think life is for living. And one of my bucket list items was, and this was the hardest thing I've done to this point, besides, like, watching my parents die, was deciding that I wanted to moved to Portland, Oregon, and from New Jersey, and it was one of the, I just couldn't see my life, like, not knowing what it was like to live in Portland, because I loved it so much. I visited it so many times. My friend Callie, who is a college friend of mine, and one of my best friends, lives here, and I would visit her. Like, it was like, that's where I wanted to go on vacation. I want to go to Europe. Once I discovered Portland, I was like, I want to go to Portland. And I started visualizing life. I'm like, what would it be like? Who would I be if I could live in Portland? What would I be doing if I could live in Portland? What kind of things would I experience if I could live in Portland? Can I do all these things here? And so I had to really go inside and say, is this worth it? Because it's a really big bucket list item to move somewhere. But everyone was, they said they'd miss us, but they were really supportive of our happiness. And when I was going to therapy, she was very supportive of my happiness. Like, if you want to do it, do it, And the last person that was really needed to come around was Catherine. And so when she said that she would move here, I said, okay. And in 3 months, we packed up our stuff. We sold things. We had a goodbye party. And we bought an RV. And because that was another one of our bucket list items. Just like, hey, what if we, like, cross the country in an RV? Like, wouldn't that be so fun? And sometimes the bucket list items I don't know, I get really ambitious with things, and moving and crossing the country and visiting people, that was the other thing. Visiting people was a little bit too much. But we bought an RV off of Craigslist, learned how to use it, got it fixed up, threw 4 of our cats in the RV, put our stuff in storage, and left on this cross-country journey of a lifetime. And we were thinking to ourselves, or at least I was thinking to myself, like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, everyone's super inspired by us trying to, you know, do this thing, because it's hard to leave somewhere. And the way we did it was also like, whoa, like, not just like, okay, arrange for, you know, plane rides and train rides and cars to move. It's like getting an RV. We didn't have an address. Like, that was so scary. And but every day I was doing it, I was like, oh my God, I'm so brave. It's crazy. It's like, you know, I think losing your parents, you know, pushes you in a couple directions. One, you have to face your fears of everything, because there's no one there to protect you but you. And 2, you are left to decide how you want to spend your time here. I mean, you're always left to decide, but there's no one shaping you anymore. And there's no one who, I mean, your parents, I'm speaking specifically about your parents. These people are not here to shape you anymore. They're not here to correct you. They're not here to tell you what to do. They are not here to guide you physically. And so you kind of feel like a nomad in your own life. And you can go a lot of different directions. Some people don't deal with their grief. Some people deal with their grief through drinking or doing unhealthy things. I chose some directions that, you know, like, that actually helped move me forward. You know, like this cross-country journey we took, which you can read more about, we blogged the whole time, on 2girls1rv.com, the number 2 girls, the number 1 RV. If you just Google 2girls1rv, it'll come up in Google. And so we did this, and it was really hard, like, and mostly because we were trying to get to Arizona on a timeline, because we wanted to be there for Thanksgiving, and my uncle was sick, and I wanted to experience a Thanksgiving with them. And also we had communicated with friends saying, hey, and family, like, hey, we're going to be crossing the country, we'd love to visit you. And suddenly everybody wanted to schedule in time, and I loved that, but it was also really difficult because it was really hard to rush, and it's not what we wanted to do, and we wanted to be supportive of, you know, people have lives and they have schedules, but it's really, like, if I could do it all over, I wouldn't tell anybody that we're going, and just be like, hey, we're in town, want to have lunch, and then it would be a nice surprise instead of, like, disappointing. I definitely felt like it disappointed a lot of people, and even though it was not the intention, it was just like, I want to visit you, I want to spend time with you, and that was really hard. And my favorite cat in the world died on the trip, which was really hard, too. I actually thought to myself, it's quite possible he might not make it, and before we left, and he didn't. And I think that was some intuition. I didn't know how he was going to die. He wasn't, I mean, he was old, but he wasn't, like, sick, you know. He just got, like, sick and died within, like, 4 days. And it was really traumatic. And so the bucket list item actually turned out to be something I look back on and I'm thankful for, but I'm thankful it's over at the same time. It was just a little bit too much, too intense. We tried to do too many things on the bucket list. It was, you know, but we visited all these places we'd never been before, new experiences. You know, we went to Nashville. We happened to be there during the CMAs. Amazing food along the way. Went to New Orleans. Everything that happened in New Orleans felt incredibly on target. Like, that was the thing on this journey. When it became incredibly difficult, I started just asking the universe, like, just show me a sign I'm taking the right direction here, because I'm making a choice. Like, this isn't like I have to move to Oregon because of some other reason other than what I want and what I want to try on. And so just, universe, just tell me if I'm going the right direction. And so I would lose some faith and then, like, almost immediately gain it back with some kind of signal from the universe. Sometimes it was something as simple as I happened to look at the clock when it was 1, 2, 3, 4, so 12:34, either AM or PM. It was just like, whoa, look, that's weird. Like I met the inventor of Twitter while I was in New Orleans, and sort of by accident, like he was at a club, and we were listening to Cult of Patinas, and we were listening to this all-female brass band, and he has to be there. My fiance pointed him out, like, hey, I think that's the guy who invented Twitter, and I walked over to him, I was like, hey, are you Jack? And he's like, yeah. Did you invent Twitter? He's like, yeah. I was like, congratulations, man. Like, it's awesome. Like, he's no longer actually a part of it. He has created Squarespace. No, not Squarespace, Square instead, the credit card processing. So he's no longer a part of Twitter, but I met him, and there were all these other things, like, I have so many pieces of the trip that I remember thinking, oh my God, this is horrible, and then something beautiful would happen. And it was very high highs and very low lows, and so like bucket list items can sort of be like that. Like they can be like this thing that you've always dreamed of, and then you're looking at it and you're in it, and it's not exactly what you dreamed of, and you could sort of take it or leave it. You could take it and say, okay, like this is the experience that I wanted to try. Here are the things that I like about it. Here's what I don't. Maybe I do it again. Maybe I enjoyed myself. Maybe I pushed myself in my comfort zones a little bit to try something new. Or maybe you learn, hey, I'd never do that again. Like I don't think I would cross the country like that again. We worked full time, which was incredibly difficult. Like we just had 17 layers of difficult, and we launched during Mercury retrograde. So for anybody who's into astrology out there, that was like, I felt also pushed into leaving. Like we didn't have to leave when we left, but we decided to, like, because there's reasons behind that as well. So Nashville, New Orleans, we saw, excuse me, the most beautiful changes in the countryside. Like that was amazing. We drove through. We started on the East Coast. At Peak Island, where they have like wild horses, which is amazing. So we started at the Atlantic Ocean, and we drove through the mountains of West Virginia, which was crazy. We actually thought we were going to die. Seriously, because we were like two girls, one RV, and the mountains of West Virginia are insane. Like you could very easily fly off a cliff. So we're definitely praying for our lives there. Going down to Nashville and to New Orleans and to seeing the change in scenery and the swampland of Louisiana, and we had a muffalata. It was like the best sandwich I've ever had, and that's a Louisiana specialty. No, it's not. It's an Italian specialty. But anyway, found it in New Orleans. Had to spend a lot of time in Texas. At Austin for the first time ever. We drove through Houston, went through Dallas, up to Oklahoma, down to Lubbock, which is actually where my cat Bastion died, and then over to New Mexico. And I've never been to New Mexico, but that was a magical healing experience. Like, let me tell you, like the grief I had around my cat dying brought up a lot of parent stuff. He had actually met my parents, and I was just like, oh, God, it was so painful. But New Mexico is the mountains and the sunsets and the beauty, and actually, like, it's like where Mexico meets Native American meets America. It's really beautiful. Like, just the energy there is amazing. I can't wait to go back. Where should we go after that? I think we went through California and visited my cousin. It was brief but beautiful for me. And by that time, I was so, mentally, emotionally, spiritually drained from all of the stuff we'd been through to get to that point that I didn't have a lot to give, and it was really hard because we had to continue on, and I had made promises to people, and I didn't want to cancel. It was important to me to make sure that we saw everybody, but it may not have been in the way that everybody was hoping for. And yeah, and so then we went to Las Vegas. That was my first time there, and I also rewind back to New Orleans. I had played roulette for the first time, and I turned like $200 into like $740, and then I took that money and I turned it into more money in Las Vegas, and we did crazy stuff in Las Vegas, and it was really intense, but I was really glad to get out of there. Visited my other little cousins, drove up through the most beautiful redwood forest in Northern California and saw the Pacific Ocean for the first time, and then made it to Portland. And so there was a lot of stuff that happened in between all these things I'm sharing with you, but I'm here now. I'm here in Portland. I'm living my life. There's definitely been some missing New Jersey moments, but my bucket list item is one of them, to live life in Portland and see what that's like. And, you know, there's some pros and cons, but mostly there's a lot of things that I'm really enjoying. I could list off 20 different things right now that I'm like, yes, you know, and it was really difficult. Like, this is a big one. This is a big bucket list item. And I'm actually thinking about getting a new tattoo about bravery, specifically, to remind you that you're the bravest person that I've ever known. You, all of you. You're brave. You're brave for trying to move forward in your life. You're brave for trying to get up out of bed every day. You're brave for listening. You're brave for living. You're brave. Thank you so much for listening and being a part of my journey. And I love being a part of yours, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening.